Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about Diablo 4 expansions. Now a few weeks ago it was confirmed that Diablo is planned to get annual expansions, meaning every single year. Now in this video we're going to break down what those expansions must have to be successful, what the players want, and honestly what they need so they don't get a mass hate of feedback. So with that, let's jump right into the video to talk about these expansions. Now, as we dive on in here, let's talk about the actual price of the expansion. Now, my ideal price, what I think an expansion should be, is around $30 USD. Now, let's be fair here. We're dealing with Blizzard. They're not exactly the ideal cost for anything, and they want their money because they're greedy. So, middle ground. A price I would be okay with paying, $40 to $60 for an expansion. I do think it's overpriced, but I think that's on the better side of what Blizzard would price this expansion. And then, of course, we have Blizzard's price, which I even wrote here, please let me be wrong on this, $70 to $90 USD. Now, do I think Blizzard could price the expansion $70, $90? Yes. I would be extremely disappointed, and it would be almost impossible to put enough content into this expansion to be worth that cost. So I really do hope I'm wrong on this one. They don't price it that high. Ideally, the closer to $30 we can get, the better, although it's Blizzard, so don't get your hopes up. I'm hoping it's that $40 to $60 range, which still too expensive, but for Blizzard, it's okay, I guess, for Blizzard pricing. Now, campaign, this is a huge part of expansions, because as we know, with seasons, we get seasonal stories, but they don't actually add on to the main campaign of the game. Now, we do know that in these expansions, we will get add-ons to the campaign. And this is kind of what I want to highlight for what I think should be added and how much campaign content we should get. Now, again, ideal, what I would like to see is 20 hours of main story campaign. Now, this includes all the cutscenes and everything. And this isn't speed rushing through it. You know, if you were really rushing through the campaign, you might be able to do it in 10 to 15. But I would like to see 20 hours. Now, I do think this is a little ambitious for Blizzard, as seeing as the main game launched with 35 hours of campaign. So in reality, I would be happy with 15 hours. Again, you know, if you were speedrunning, it's probably more like 8 to 10, but 15 hours of just watching everything, going through it, I think would be a good and ideal amount of campaign. Now, of course, we have to talk about Blizzard, being they're the people who own this game, and we could only get 5 to 10 hours of story. Now, I would be really, really disappointed if an expansion that we're paying for only had 5 to 10 hours, but we can't count it out because, again, it's Blizzard. We have no idea what they're going to do. They're going to try and squeeze us for every single drop of money they can get. So I wouldn't be surprised. I'm really hoping for that 15 to 20 hours of campaign story, though. Now, this does being said, this does include, I want high quality cutscenes and story just like we had in the base game. That's one of the things that Diablo did actually pretty well. Overall, the game kind of released in a not so great state, but the campaign I thought was pretty good. The cutscenes were absolutely fantastic. The quality of the cutscenes was amazing. Super happy with that. I really liked the voice acting, and the story flowed. It had a few problems in the story, but overall, it was a pretty good campaign. I would like to see that continued with the same amount of quality. Again, you know, if they try to give us 15 hours, but there's a huge decrease in quality, I do think that's going to be a problem, and I would be highly disappointed in them for that. Classes. Now here is a big one, as we can see. Ideally, I would like to see 2 classes added. Now I do want to preface here, they don't necessarily have to add classes to fulfill this requirement because they could add more specializations to each class. And now what do I mean like that? Like right now we have the class Necromancer. Now they can be a Necromancer with minions, or they can sacrifice those minions. Well, what if we had, you know, a third or fourth option, you know, more viability, more ways to create a unique build to your playstyle? That is something I would love to see, you know, more, you know, specializations, more ways to customize that individual class. Now, I think that's one way they could go, and I think the player base would be okay with that. You know, especially right now, the classes in Diablo are kind of pretty simple. You know, we could add a lot more systems, a lot more trees to make them more complex, you know, add more to the progression of your character, especially in the late game, I think would be a good way, you know, a good change to really give us some more content and more specialization to really make that class feel unique. Now, this is probably the harder route to go. I don't think they'll go towards this, as I think they're trying to keep the class system pretty simple. So I think they'll maybe drift more towards just adding an entirely new class into the game. Now, again, let's talk about what would be ideal. Now, for $60, I would want 2 classes. You know, $60, that's what most games cost brand new. And this is just an expansion, 2 classes minimum for $60. But we have to keep in mind reality. Now, reality is maybe 1 class, even if we get a class in the first expansion, and it will be broken beyond belief. And you can see I put here not in a good way. I don't mean broken as in strong. I mean broken as the class is completely busted and was rushed. That is my expectation. I'm hoping to be proved wrong. Hopefully we get maybe 1 class that's just great. It fits well. Maybe they import it from another game like the Blood Knight that they put into, I believe it was Diablo Immortal. Again, I hope they don't take too many things from Diablo Immortal, as that game's pay to win, but we'll just see how it goes. I don't have high expectations for a new class being brought in, and if there is a new class being brought in, I don't think it will be very good at the start. I think it will be very rushed, and overall, I just don't have high expectations here. Ideally, I would like to see 2 classes added, and really, in my opinion, I would rather have the specializations to just really customize each individual class. Like if you look at it, if you've played Last Epoch is a good mix between Diablo 4's simplification and PoE's, overdoing of the class system. PoE is extremely complex, especially if you haven't played it before, jumping into it this late into the game. Where Last Epoch has a good blend of each. It has super complex systems, but it eases you into them. It shows you how to build in them, and it really gives you a ton of customization. I really love that game. There's going to be future videos about that game, so stay tuned for those. But, maybe if the developers could take a look at that, gain some inspiration. I'm not saying copy it, but just gain some inspiration on what they could do to really make each class more unique in this game. Now with the map, we know we're going to get a new zone, the new areas in the expansion. Here I just kind of did a little mock-up. I'm not saying this is where it needs to be. I actually don't know. If I had to guess, it's probably going to be somewhere in the southern region or across the sea. From the cutscenes that we've got, this, I don't know. I don't know where it's going to go. This is just a mock-up of about the size that I would expect. I would like to see, a 20% increase in total landmass for the DLC area. A new place to go, new towns, new story, and a big one, I want to see new mobs and monsters. That is a big one. Right now, the mob variability in the game is pretty low. We don't have very many unique mobs in the game. And with an expansion, I would expect to see some new mobs. And not just a reskin that does the same attack but just looks different. Actually new mobs with new mechanics that perform different ways. That's what I would like to see, especially with the DLC area. If we're going to a new land, there's going to be different types of monsters there. That's a really big hope, and I really, really hope they include this in the game. Without it, that's, I think, one of the reasons Diablo feels kind of stale sometimes is because you're basically fighting the same mob reskinned throughout the entire game. It's really quite frustrating. There's maybe like 3 types of mobs, and they're just all reskins. We need some more new mobs that do different stuff, new mechanics, and have their each individual quirks and how they work. Now let's talk about the overall content being added in this DLC. Additional content in all aspects of the game, early, mid, and end game, with a focus on more overworld, mid, and end game content. Now this, honestly, I hope gets fulfilled long before the expansion, because if it doesn't, I don't think we even will make it to the expansion. Right now, we have a severe lack of end game content, specifically in the overworld area. And I think that's why it's kind of boring. Early leveling is fun because we have so much stuff to do in the overworld. We can go do events with our friends. We can do world bosses. We can do all this. In the end game, it's just nightmare dungeons on repeat for about 150 hours. It gets boring. It gets stale. I would love to see more endgame content and really tie in that endgame with the overworld to give us more variety and more replayability. I think it would make this game so much more enjoyable for a lot of the community. Now, mid-game content, I do believe, is struggling a little bit too. There's a weird gap from World Tier 3 to World Tier 4 where it's kind of, you don't really fit in anywhere. You're too high level and you're not getting very much stuff from overworld, but you can't really do nightmare dungeons that fast to get the XP, and it's kind of a weird middle ground. I wish they had a system to help bridge that gap from the early game doing overworld content to nightmare dungeons and to other stuff. There's kind of a weird gap right there that's kind of hard to cross depending on your character, and I would really like to see that changed, and just some more content overall in general would be greatly appreciated. Now that is going to wrap up what I think is absolutely required in the expansion. Now, of course, they might do something crazy. They might increase the level of our character to give us something more to level up to. They might give us more Paragon points. Who knows what they're going to do? And we don't have any content about this yet, as I think they're just solely focusing on Season 2 right now. Now here pretty soon we're going to be getting a lot of content for season 2, and of course I'll be covering that, everything you need to know. So with that, I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys learned something. I hope to see you guys in a future video. Peace out.